Group, and this is your end of day recap for Tuesday, January 9th. And yes, the Bitcoin ETF, I guess, is not being approved. Or I should say, no, it is not being approved. I'm laughing because it's kind of enough is enough with this, with the drama over the Bitcoin ETFs. It's so funny. If you think people don't like attention, I really think that they do because it's kind of at this point, and I don't want to make this whole video about this, but the news just came out, so I'll talk about it. But I mean, there's already a Bitcoin ETF that tracks futures. Obviously that's more risky to me than it is having a spot ETF. But hey, I guess it is what it is. They had to get their ducks in a row of how to proceed with it. But so, it sounds like the announcement, the FCC website was hacked. So interesting. But regardless of all the drama, that the drama is going to continue with this, I really think if you're looking for a trade for this, what I would be doing particularly is going long Bitcoin and going short Coinbase. I think that's a very simplistic trade. And the reason why I think that trade works is because you're just not going to need to transact Bitcoin. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of other crypto coins and so forth. So Coinbase will still do okay. But if people are going to be transacting Bitcoin ETF, versus buying Bitcoin directly. And I think some people will be doing that. I don't think all people will be doing that, but it should take away slightly from their business. And I think plus a lot of these names have run up. So I think that's a really good trade. Now, again, you don't have to go short outright. You can go long Bitcoin and you can go short coin. And I think that trade will work for a couple other names too, because the other reason for that too is for some funds that have wanted to get some exposure to Bitcoin, right? They've been doing it through what's called like proxies, right? The next best thing. And people used to do, if you don't believe me, people used to do this back in the day. And I'm giving myself some age here with this reference, but the same thing with the gold ETF. When that first came out, people were buying before they bought gold, GLD, they were buying gold miners, because that was the next best thing because it was harder to buy. You could do it, but it was harder to get it done. You could like Kitco, I think, was a place that people were buying, gold directly. But the bottom line, people are always looking for the easiest thing, right? And at that point, there was a lot of people who were buying gold miners to get some exposure, right? And then of course people would just buy gold. So it's kind of the same thing. Why would you want to buy Mara, which is a Bitcoin miner, when you could just buy Bitcoin itself? But some people didn't like that when I said that on Twitter yesterday. That's my trade. You don't have to trade it. You could disagree with it, and that's what makes a market, of course. Speaking of the market, let's get to that. So, kind of an interesting day. I didn't have this in here, but breath was lagging. So if you look at today's performance, what kind of masks things sometimes, and you may have been perfectly okay with today's price action. Like you may be fine with the price action for the day because you may have been trafficking more in some of the things that went up today because there were some things. The Qs had a nice rally from the open, was up, as you could see right here on my in my spreadsheet. Qs were up about 1% from the open. So you might have loved today's price action. However, there was very thin participation. As you could see that if I open this up a little bit further, there's a lot more red areas than green. Now, look at the areas that went down today, right? A lot of energy stocks, again, they've been lagging. Steel stocks were down a lot. The SLX ETF was down 3% on the trading session. A bunch of other areas, metals and mining, which kind of covers some of that. The banks were down 1% today. The Chinese internet names were down another 1.5%. Now they rallied a little bit from the open, but again, a lot more things in the red, and that got hit harder than the things that went up today. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things, where there's some bright spots in energy, and if you're looking in that area, and what happened with some of the groups that outperformed pretty well. The semis finished up on the day; they rallied 1.1% from the open. Didn't close on the highs, but still pretty good. Same thing, like biotech has been absolutely on fire. So let's talk first with the indices and how the market webs can really kind of give you a sense of where you can basically do your trading, right? Depending if you're staying long or if you're kind of shifting or if you're buying the dip. So what we're looking at is S&P futures, and it's a 1 hour chart. We could look at SPY too. It's going to be very similar levels, but we started the week inside the value area. We broke above. You had a retest and you had a bounce on the retest. Same thing. So that level is 471.31 in case you're don't have the market webs and you want to know some of these levels. But same thing with the Qs, right? It's quite normal to have a strong, because yesterday was extremely strong and the breadth was good yesterday too. But here's your move, right? Here's your check back, right? And we held 401.30 and we bounced, right? And Qs are higher than they were yesterday. So that's pretty decent price action, right? For the Qs. But overall, and then you look at IWM, which is down today, right? This not so great. Notice the difference. IWM is not above its value area for the week, and is so it's inside value, and it also is underperforming. So not every area. So all I'm trying to say here is that not every area of the market is strong, and which is potentially not great. Is if you look at, because I don't have it here. And if you look at the NYSE summation index, right, we're starting to see this crossover. And I think this has not been updated for today, but you'll see a bigger crossover. So again, what does that mean, or what does that translate to? It means more stocks are going down than going up. Now, like I said, you may have been in some of the good names today, right? And you probably, if that was the case, then you weren't complaining too much. So of course, let's go to the most talked about name right now, which is NVIDIA. Here's my thought on NVIDIA really quickly. I'm still long. I don't love the way it closed, so I took another price target, right? That's just trade management. I took a target at the end of the day at 533, stock closed at 531. I still have it on, but again, I'm not going to give back, nice gains on this, right? I want to stay long as it's working well. Notice what it did today, and I was very adamant about this earlier today, but I said, if you wanted to get in this name, right, you're going to have to think about, you're going to have to, what happens a lot of times is traders always look towards the left. They tend to look at, if a stock is down a lot from the highs, right? Oh, geez, well, this stock's trading at 25 bucks and a couple of years ago it was trading at 200. It must be a good buy, right? That's the worst possible thinking, in my opinion, that you can have. And it's kind of the same thing when a stock goes up too. They're like, oh, geez, I missed it. The stock went up 5%. I should have bought it yesterday, right? But you got to think about what's going forward, right? Obviously, a company that was up, much higher than it was previously, there were reasons for why it was up there, and there's reasons for why it's down here now. Perhaps their business changed, right? PayPal is always the example that I try to give. When PayPal was going up to new highs, right? It was the only game in town. There wasn't a lot of other places where you can transfer money. Now they have more competition, right? There's, what's the one from JP Morgan Chase, Zelle, right? You could do, so they kind of had a little bit of a moat for a little while, a monopoly in that payment, peer-to-peer payment space. Now you could do that in a bunch of other places. So that's why PayPal is not going back to the highs unless they come up with a better mousetrap, right? So, but people don't think like that, right? People think, oh, look at where it was. So same thing. So what I'm trying to do is just contrast why people get stuck, right? They're like, oh, I can't buy this now. So it depends what you think NVIDIA is doing going forward. So we'll see. It may give another chance tomorrow, and I'm happy to kind of add to my position if we do dip into support. But this was perfect, right? Because ultimately what we want to see, when a name kind of goes straight up, is a little bit of digestion, a little bit of back and forth, right? And even this was just down a little bit, and here was your level, right, to go long, right? And again, you can't look at what it did to the left, right? You got to think about where it's going. So this provided a nice little entry. Some folks in the trading room who didn't get long yesterday took advantage of that. So where is the stock? So even though it didn't close on the highs, I think the breakout is still in effect. If it has an inside day or kind of lets the 5-day moving average catch up a little bit, and it goes down a little bit, I don't think that that's a major problem. Again, that's why you manage the trade. You take a little bit off and you can kind of relax with a smaller position, right? This is just trading 101. By the way, look at the volume, by the way, on the breakout too, right? So ultimately, I think that we're out of the range. We do have to close above, where I would be wrong is on this weekly chart. If this doesn't close above 503.80, right? Because again, don't forget, we have the CPI report. We've got bond auctions later this week. And so things could change, right? You always have to stay on your toes and have a contingency plan. So if NVIDIA doesn't close above 503.80, then we're back in the range. And again, that's for the week. We're looking at a weekly bar. All right. Other names that I thought that I was impressed with today, right? Because of course, there was a lot of really good price action in some names outside of that and in some different groups. SMCI followed through today. That was a nice move, and that's going to be testing those highs. It's amazing how SMCI and NVIDIA tend to kind of go together. Broadcom, which I mentioned yesterday, I don't think it closed on the highs, but, same thing, right? Had a huge move, kind of came in a little bit, fell apart a little bit, but right into the 20-day moving average and back above. A lot of strong names are doing that. One that saw a lot of option activity today was ARM. I'm still long this name. I actually put back, or I added back a target that I took yesterday in it, and I'll stay long this name as long as it stays above $70. Right, I'll give it a little bit more bumper room than the top of value. And then another name in the semi group, and then I'll move on to another group, is CAMT. Remember, I think I talked about this in yesterday's video, but CAMT was strong when a lot of the other semi names were not. For now, I took a target at $72. I think it's 72, was it? 72. So I didn't get the highs in this one. That's my third target in this swing trade, and I will sit with the balance, right? And keep in mind, taking a target or two, right? Just like I was talking about with ARM, if the stock goes down 1 or 2%, right, you can by chance add it back, provided that it's staying, above its breakout level, right, and above its support. Next level, of course, to talk about, and I should really be talking about this group first, but that's okay. Biotech continues to be red hot, even though the ETF didn't close up, by a huge amount. The dip was bought again today, right? Look at the what it did from the open, up 1.2%. Again, it shows that there's a lot of buying going on there. The medical device group was leaning at one point in the day. It did not close on the highs, but was up more than 0.25%. And ISRG reported good numbers. I think that's one of the biggest weights in the IHI ETF. And look at this thing; it's up to 249. So I think I did the right thing by staying long IHI. Let's see. Here's the holding page. It's the second biggest holder, so it's about 11% of the IHI ETF. Here's what that looks like if you just want a view of IHI. This name's not going to trade here in the after hour. The ETF's not going to trade in the after hours, but I like that. Again, it's already made a big move from the lows, but you got to look at where you think it's going, next, not, because this was a great buy at this lower VPOC, right? This volume at price crushed it on the lows. Look at that. Right. And that's why we use the market webs, just a beautiful reversal. Look at this one down here too. Right. Notice when it was down here, it didn't take it left it to come back to it. Right. And that was a perfect takeout and reversal off of that. So I'm playing for from VPOC to VPOC, right? I'm looking for this next one. 56.75 is where I think the IHI ETF is going. I also like, a couple of the smaller cap names. This is TMDX, which I believe belongs to that group, but really nice. This thing has really not participated the last couple of weeks, but look at it get going now that medical devices are starting to go a little bit. So I like this name if you're looking for something, a little bit higher risk, because this name moves fast, right? Speaking of some of the other names, there's a lot of biotech names that are on the 4-week new high list. There's been a lot of good strength, but a lot of these things are kind of running into resistance, right? And that's where, again, having, understanding where there's overhead supply in some of these names, really helps, right? So here's one, VKTX, 2168, right? It's probably going to have some difficulty there. Even though this looks like a really powerful break, you're just getting right into that overhead supply. This is why I always like to see names that are more in defined uptrends, because you're not dealing with any of that overhead supply. There was another name too, but I'm forgetting what it was in the biotechs. Sarepta too was one that had a monster day too on the back of that JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. They had some nice analysts said some nice things about what they reported, but right into that virgin point of control. Now, remember, it doesn't have to stop here, but it becomes a battle of new buyers and old sellers, right? These sellers got trapped when the stock went down on there was a drug announcement that the FDA did not approve. So you've got a lot of what's called dead bodies over here, right? A lot of people who have been trapped and waiting to sell when the price gets back up there. Hence the term overhead supply. I also had, I just can't remember the other name. There's another biotech name that slams right into an overhead supply, but I don't have it up in front of me. Let's talk about the next group, CrowdStrike, right? Really nice move. I was targeting that virgin point of control when we were here. It didn't do it. It kind of fell down. I did this. So I did two trades last week that I could talk about in the cyberspace. One worked really well. One did not. And again, I talk about losers and I talk about winners too. I know some people just like to talk about winners. I get it. Right. But that's not reality. Everybody has losers too. So CrowdStrike, I'll do the good and then I'll do the bad. CrowdStrike, I did add to my position, right? Once we hit support, it's been one of my favorite names. That's why it helps to kind of, organize in your trading plan where your high conviction names are versus your names that you're more of just a tourist in, right? Not to say I was a tourist in Palo Alto last week. It just wasn't working. Right. And it hit a stop price. So I got rid of it. Right. It broke below its January value area. And it just wasn't doing anything. And I was afraid that this was going to go down to this 200-day moving average. This pattern also, I didn't like the look of that. But sure enough, these things come back and perhaps I needed maybe a little bit more patience, or I should have just got back into it yesterday. Yesterday I think that would have been the right decision, is to get back into it yesterday or this morning on the break of the value area, because still the majority of the move happened, today, right? So you could have definitely done that, but that's a real nice, I like this, right? And I am long Palo Alto in another portfolio. That's the TTG trend portfolio. Just to go a little further into some of these names, Zscaler, right? This did take out this VPOC up here, but so it got back to those highs. It left this for the I'm so close last week. So I would watch what this does at 226. And I'm seeing a lot of names in the tech software space that rallied right up to that top of value. So what does that mean? Well, you've got a little bit of short-term resistance. Not to say that Zscaler is going to stop right there, but you've got a nice level to trade against. You could trade against 226, or wait until it gets above there. Also another name too that is less popular, but sometimes I like the less popular names, right? This made a nice move inside its made a nice move. This was a really big star. And again, it just didn't get that much attention, but it was really nice. 45.49 is a level to watch. I know for a while, people really fell in love with this name, VRT. Watch 49.58, right? That's something to pay attention to, that top of value, right? Shopify made a really nice move too, but that's got to get through overhead supply. Not overhead supply, but the top of January value area. The red is the overhead supply virgin point of control, but I think this is a good chance. Remember, I think this was Friday of last week that they bought a lot of September calls in this one. I mentioned, so that's where your strength was again. Tech, I didn't even go through really, outside of that, but Meta looks decent if it could stay above 356. Here's what the grade 8 names did. Again, I call them the grade 8 because I throw Netflix in there, but half of them were up today. Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Oh, this was another name. I thought of it. Yeah. So this is from our watch list. We compile this watch list every weekend and then I add to it. But this was RXRX, right? Take a look at this one. Right into that virgin point of control. So again, this is, I mean, that was a 14% move. Just since we talked about this name, earlier since I put this name on the watch list, but this is I mean, that's a nice trade. From $10 to 14. It's a 40% move. You take it, you put it in your pocket, right? Anything else is you're being greedy, in my opinion. Now, it's okay to leave a trailer, but a 40% move in a week, you know, sometimes people don't, they forget to do they need the perspective. So that's why I try to do that. Datadog has had a nice move this week. I didn't take every one of these trades, right? I can't take everyone, every trade that triggers and manage it well, considering everything that I'm doing managing a trading room. But the TMDX is here that we already talked about, NVIDIA, AMD, right? That also got back to those previous highs. If it has an inside day and kind of checks back to 144, that might be a better place. Last thing I'll talk about is, I mentioned what is doing well in the energy space, and it's the coal names. The trend continues. CEIX hasn't been I'm sorry, I'm thinking of CENX, is it? CENX. Oh, look at that. It did not close above its value area, so it kind of got rejected there. 1172 is the level to watch there, but I think AMR is the best name. Keep in mind, I'm going to talk about this for 2 seconds. Just the other name, CCJ is another name that saw some call activity. Watch to see if it can stay inside its value area, which is 44. Just 2 other quick names, Dash and Dash had a big day. Uber had a decent day too. Also, right to the top of the value area. So again, if you didn't get into these names, now you want to look where's your resistance, where's your support that you could trade against, and think about to the right, and that's 102.65. Last one, Uber. Watch to see if Uber can get above 60.92. Had a good day, not as good as Dash. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Just end of video message is that just kind of be cognizant that breadth is not good. What do I do when breadth is not good? I have a short leash on trades. For instance, I got into Celsius today, right? I got right out of it because I don't, if we're continuing to see this bad breadth, you'll continue to see breakouts fail if the breadth is not good, because there's just not conviction. So, all of those names that I went through, they're going to have a test. We're going to need more buying that comes in. Will that happen after the CPI report on Thursday? It could be, right? We don't know what we're going to get. They're looking for month over month 0.2 for CPI, but we'll see, because I think that's going to be a potential catalyst for the week. But yes, when I see breadth declining, I have a very short leash on trades, and I don't want to keep adding to exposure. I actually want to be reducing my exposure when the breadth is poor. So those are some of the adjustments that we make when we start to see more names going down versus up, which is basically what we've been seeing in January, even though we had a hell of a day yesterday. All right, guys, that's it for today's recap. 2 places that you can go to if you want to know more about Tribeca Trade Group. You go right to our website, tribecatradegroup.com. You could also go to my Substack page, which I don't have that up for you, but you can find it just on my Twitter page, and you can find out what we're all about by signing up for a 7-day trial on Substack. Guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.